I guess maybe the best thing at this point would be to get feedback from you all.
Oh, one more thing we discussed Friday is we have a flood wall that's 40 to 60 years old, and we just received our first 5-year inspection, and they really cracked down on inspections and raised it to the highest level. And as that flood wall system gets older and our flood pumps, the Corps of Engineers taking a real close look at not just Frankfort, but everybody across the nation on how well you maintain your flood wall system. And so as that system gets older and older, there's not any money in the general fund. I think we generally spend about $15,000 a year on our flood wall on the maintenance. And to rebuild or touch some of that stuff is very, $2 to $3 million. The piping under the walls, the concrete eye walls that failed in New Orleans, all these things are going to be really looked at.
Replacing the flood pumps themselves would be cheap.
Yes. So one thing going forward is just that maintenance that as this infrastructure gets older, our current budget does not cover it. So it's one opportunity, I guess, to have a revenue source to look at the flood wall.
And we have more than just a South Frankfort flood wall. When I first come here, and I'm fairly still new to this community, flood wall, I think South Frankfort flood wall, but there is an extensive flood wall system on the north side. It's a levee system, flood wall system, so it's very, very more complicated, and that's the older version one that hasn't been certified, other than by a letter by the Corps of Engineers, which I've been told they're not going to do anymore, by a letter. So
Feedback from elected officials?
No pun intended, but we've obviously been flooded with stormwater problems this season, even, and are having a hard time keeping up just with our current stormwater problems. And as we continue to comply with the consent judgment with the court order from the state to separate our stormwater from our sanitary sewer system, those problems are only going to be exacerbated. And as was noted, about 60% of the impervious surface in the city is tax exempt right now. And so this, I see this as a way to save local taxpayers tens of millions of dollars over the years, while giving us an opportunity to actually finally address our stormwater problems in a comprehensive fashion. And I'm really glad to see this document. Good work. Thank you.
Just to echo what Commissioner Wilder said, it's impressed with the expediency and the thought and detail put into this plan. Great job, guys.
Glad to see it. Thank you.
So we will, with the Commission's blessing, we will proceed with this plan
Seems to be the feeling, yes.
And follow up with discussion with the county and see what's necessary to bind our agreement, bind our partnership. Did you want to talk? We want to move to solid waste? You ready for that? Everybody ready for that? Okay. I'll talk about this when I'll let somebody else talk about solid waste. We have had several suggestions put on the table, and staff has researched this. And Jeff, do you want to make any comments, or do you just want to see what the will of the commission is?
Well, a few. I guess we last talked about this item several weeks ago, and I think at the close of the meeting, I was asking for some direction from the board of if we wanted to go down the road of a pay-as-you-throw program. We researched several cities in the United States that are currently have a pay-as-you-throw program, and but what we kind of also discussed was the code enforcement section. The communities that have adopted this pay-as-you-throw have revamped their solid waste ordinances to enforce, but there's an enforcement component that we really haven't touched on in our meetings to date. And the second item was the billing mechanism if we go down the pay-as-you-throw. And so those are two things that, from operations, we can switch over to a pay-as-you-throw pretty quickly, depending on which route you all wish to go. But the two issues we really haven't addressed are the code enforcement and the billing systems.
With the direction of the commission, I approached the director of the plant board, who is currently doing our sewer building, and we had met as a staff, and we came up with 8 or 9 questions that we would like them to address. And the plant board director took those questions to his board, and he says they're going to come back with a written proposal, which we have not received yet.
That sounds like they're at least open to the possibility of handling the building. That's great.
Well, I guess to get things kicked off, if I may, Mayor.
Pardon me?
To get things rolling here on this discussion, the areas of concern that, Jeff, that you mentioned were code enforcement, and what was the other one?
Billing.
Billing. Okay, so we have a possible option with billing with the plant board. In terms of code enforcement, Gary, can you give us I don't know if you've talked to other communities who have a similar program in place, and what sort of obstacles or sort of how they handle their code enforcement. Can you give me a little briefing on that?
No, Jeff and I spoke on this Friday. He did all the research, and from our conversation, it depends on what type of system you do, depends on what type of enforcement there is. I haven't, and I don't have any idea how property maintenance would be able to validate someone who did or didn't follow the system on trash day, by not being on the truck. We can do paperwork based on other staff's comments, but it still is required written correspondence from an employee to us, and vice versa. Now, if someone takes trash and dumps it on someone else's private property, yes, we can handle that just as without changing anything. They take it and dump it down the street on someone else's yard or public right of way. That's
It kind of depends on what program you have. If it's a container program that you do rollout containers and people aren't using them and they're just throwing loose bags out, then they would be in violation. If it's a bag program and they're putting containers out, or move outs, like when someone has an apartment and they just throw everything out on the curb and they're gone to California, how do you handle that? Because your whole program's based on volume, and
Sure.
you have one offender that just throws everything out and it's gone. How do you handle those situations? And so that's where I'm saying in code enforcement, it's not the people. Once you set up, if it's a rollout cart, if it's a bag or a sticker, that type of program will kind of influence what you would look for in violations. So I think that's kind of the first step, is to what program you would do. Then you would follow up with ordinances that would address those concerns.
I think that, at least sort of what I've gathered, I haven't recall any specific conversations about this from the fellow commissioners, but that in our discussions in the past, there's been sort of a consensus with the idea of the various size cans, rollout cans, as an avenue to explore. I don't know if that's something that, in terms of for this discussion, we can say that's it or not. I don't know. So I'd open
that
that
would
to
be
the
the
floor.
easiest to enforce, in my opinion.
That one would be?
Just because
Seems like
if there's plastic bags, they can leave a note or knock on the door like they do now when they leave them out too long or don't pull it up too long. It wouldn't be, it'd just be easier to see and detect.
Well, I can just give you a little example of, I talked to the solid waste director in Gainesville, Florida, and the city and the county both have a pay-as-you-throw program, and they use the rollout carts. And they have, if you have, the idea is you buy you rent the smallest cart that you think you'll need, and then if you have holidays or overflow trash, then you can go down to the local Publix down there or the Kroger's here, and you can buy overflow bags. And we talked to Kroger's here, and they would be willing to supply overflow bags at their local stores, and I'm sure others locally also. For a stocking fee, minimal, they would put those bags on the shelf. And that's how they do the volume program, is through rollout carts and then overflow with bags. They buy 5 for $12 down there is what they sell them for. And then the code enforcement, you know, if you have too small a can and you keep overflowing, which happens in apartments a lot, then they work with the owners of the apartments, and they've got an ordinance that allows you to upsize one time or without a fee, because you kind of get into the technical aspects of
I thought I could use this, but I need this other size.
Can you work with
Actually,
me?
afterwards.
If you have a fee that you have to trade-in fee, or if you're low income and you can't afford the big can but you need it because you have 5 people in your household, the ordinance would kind of address those gray areas to where elderly or people that are on low income budgets would be able, you know, if they're just continuing, they can afford the small can, but they need the big one, and are constantly a problem in the neighborhood, the ordinance would allow for some give, I guess, to make it all work.
I guess I would describe that as kind of a hybrid system, where we're relying on cans for the most part, then supplementing with bags. And that's the system I prefer, and there's a few reasons. This is such a controversial topic that no matter what we do, even if we go back to the old garbage fee or get rid of the fee altogether and adjust taxes, or go with pay-as-you-throw, or go with any type of pay-as-you-throw, no matter what we do, even if we don't do anything, some amount of people are going to be pretty unhappy. But folks, we've gotten such a good response from the rollout program, from the rollout pilot project in Crestwood, and it seems like I think a lot of folks would really, if folks are going to pay a fee for how much they throw away, I think a lot of folks would really value seeing something for that fee, which is to say the city providing containers. I think that's pretty relevant, and it would also, am I correct in understanding that would allow us, even with overflow bags mixed in, that would still allow us to essentially automate a lot of our collection, and that has benefits for us in terms of cost savings. And of course, anytime we save tax dollars, we're saving our constituents money at the end of the day in the long run. So there's that, and we're also that also has impacts on our workers' comp, etc. When we have automated collection.
I would set the infrastructure for that to speed up.
Sure. And that would also, I think one of the things, you know, right now folks we offer such a high level of service, and if we were to go purely with carts, for example, that would essentially amount to a reduction in service. And one thing that I'd really like to see us do is still maintain our current level of service, where we still pick up anything folks want to set out. And a hybrid system allows for that balance between setting out everyday trash and also setting out overflow. The question is, how does that jive with like oversized items? You know, because right now we'll take
Gainesville, that's a good question, because we ask, well, you got to pay as you've got a volume program. What do you deal with bulky items?
Sure.
And they've been, since 1994, doing this pay-as-you-throw program, and they would have a certain day of the month, and people would have to call in, and they would charge. That was early on in the program, and it's evolved into, their phone calls were just constant at the desk, that it drove them crazy, and they said, can we make this change, because go back to just put it out there, a bulky item, and we'll pick it up. But you know, a couch, or you don't have those every week, so